My name is Renee and my studio is Jellyfish Pilates, as is my Instagram, and I am located in Windsor, Ontario, right across from Detroit. And yeah, I've came up through Stop Pilates, so I've trained in Ontario, and yeah, I traveled all over the world representing them as an instructor trainer. And once we started a family in Toronto, we just wanted to have the grandparents and we wanted our village built up around us. That's what brought us back to Windsor. Slower pace of life and more cost-effective living for us, and mainly having, like I said, our village and grandparents around the children. So,
Right. Yeah.
mhm.
Well, I guess that's the segue into like Pilates in Windsor sort of thing, right? Like, did you think, okay, like, did you know what the market looked like and how people would respond to it, sort of thing, or
Yeah, it was interesting because I did start, like, I went to college for dance in Edmonton, Alberta, and that's when I first was exposed to Pilates. That would have been like 97. And so when I moved back to Windsor, I was teaching in gyms, like a lot of group mat classes, and, bought my first reformer. So that would have been, still like 99, 2000, started doing my training. So when I moved back here, a good 10 years later, there was still like a lot of mat-based, beautiful, busy studios, but not a lot of
yes,
fully equipped studios.
very cool.
So I felt like the city was still, maybe a little behind as far as like a studio that had like 10 reformers lined up.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of that happening here. There's a few people that are teaching on equipment and things like that. And then, like I said, a lot of really beautiful, successful mat-based group class studios. So,
Yes, right.
yeah.
Which is a far cry from Toronto, where there's like boutique studios all over the place that we don't even know about, right? Like they're just there and they're
Yes.
servicing like their immediate community, but they're not like really well known, like like the Body Harmonics of the
Yeah,
world, right?
definitely. And I'll give a shout out to Studio 3, which is in Toronto. That was a studio that I had opened with the lovely Carla Hales. And when I left Toronto, she kept the studio going and she's moved it and expanded it. It's right at Yonge and Summerhill. So yeah, that's definitely an example of like a hidden gem with brilliant
Yes.
trainers and instructors. And like you said, there's a lot in the bigger city,
Yeah.
and just a different clientele that I had in Toronto, a lot more
Hmm.
male clients and just like a more diverse, obviously, population. So just different clientele
Yeah.
for
Sure.
sure.
So you said you had more like my ears perked up, right? Of course, male. Like, tell me more.
Yeah.
So you had more male clients in the city?
Yeah, like in Toronto, I wouldn't say it was half and half, but I definitely had like, 3 to 5 consistent male clients weekly
Yeah.
that I trained. And obviously traveling for Stott all around the world, like I trained a lot of male instructors that wanted to become teachers.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say like now in Windsor, I probably have like 1 or 2 consistent male clients for a set, and some just
Right.
kind of try it and then so yeah,
Yeah.
so very different. And I didn't have kids yet then, so I was also, I get up at 6 a.m. and go train clients in their legal offices before their day started, and
Right. Yes.
it was just a different pace, I guess, in general, for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So what would have been the demographics of the guys who are walking into your class in Toronto versus in Windsor now?
Well, like I said, some of them would have been students that wanted to become instructors. So,
Okay.
like Wayne comes to my mind from Stott, who still teaches there now. But I would say the clients were more so, mid 30s to 40s and older, typically with some kind of issue or injury. So major back issues, lumbar spine issues, but still wanted to play tennis and golf and stay active. So yeah, lots of, I would say, injuries probably brought them
Yeah. Yeah.
to it. Whereas here, I would say my few male clients are the same, like, older, stiff, want to keep moving, want to come back to. I have a client here that I trained before I went to Toronto that I'm now seeing again. So it's
Oh,
been like,
nice.
like a 20-year kind of gap almost.
Hmm.
So yeah, so people that want to like loosen up, have a little more flexibility, more functional movement in their life. And there's a few NHL guys that off season I've trained in the city that are local boys. So with
Okay.
COVID's kind of slowed everything down, but
Right.
Yeah. And how about you? Do you feel like you have more male clients because you're a man, and so men
Yeah,
gravitate wanting to work with you more and like trust that the Pilates is going to be maybe more challenging because they're
right.
working with a guy or
Yeah, basically, right? Like, I mean, I think there's something to be said for seeing someone that looks like them doing the work, right? Like, I mean, just the fact that, like, I always joke about the fact that even with Pilates, we talk about classical versus contemporary, and I say it's like dancers and non-dancers, right? Like, I mean, like, so if you look at like people who came to Pilates from another sport or whatever, and then people who came from dance, like there's the way that
right.
it's taught, the way that you move is so special and so unique that like the average, desk warrior guys are looking at it like I just can't do that. So that's clearly not for me. So I find that there's a connection and guys are more willing to give it a try coming from me who was, a stiff athlete like they are, right? Sort of thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so that seems to be a pretty low entry point in terms of just connecting. It's just seeing that it's not like someone who can put their foot behind their ear, like because they're never going to be able to do
Right.
it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and all my personal training clients, I've got into Pilates. Like anyone who I've trained in the past, especially while I was going through my teacher trainings and my courses, like they were my guinea pigs. So now they appreciate it,
Right.
and then they're telling their friends about it, and I love this, and I think Joel Crosby's here in the chat too. Um, the moment when guys are willing to get like teased and ribbed by their friends for doing Pilates and they don't care, that's you have them, right? When they'll
Yes.
tell their buddies that their golf games got better because of Pilates, like Pilates, you're doing Pilates, that's for girls. They're like, no, you gotta come, man. Like honestly, this is that you got them
Yeah.
when they're at that point, when they're ready to take, getting completely run over by their buddies for
Yeah,
doing Pilates.
definitely. Yeah, Pilates or yoga, or, I feel like for any client that's just, like I really appreciate clients that are excited about the work and, want to like absorb what I'm saying and translate it into their everyday life. Like when I have a client come back and say like, I was doing set exercise at home and I heard your voice like giving me this cue or correction. It's like when you hear my like nagging voice in your head when you're
In
not
your
with
head,
me, like that's where the real magic happens, right? Because
right?
then you're like,
Exactly.
that's where the
When they're
transformation takes place.
driving, yeah. Yeah, yeah. When they're driving, they're changing their posture because they remember your cues that you gave them. Then you're like, yeah, we gotcha.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So, but yeah, that's it. And you mentioned yoga too. Do you teach yoga as well?
Yeah, I have studied a few different styles of yoga. So right now in my business model, I have other teachers taking on groups, and I'm mainly just doing private. So I may incorporate some yoga, but I haven't taught just yoga for probably about over a year now.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
incorporate it into the privates, but I'm mainly on the equipment doing privates and semi-privates.
Okay. So now, since you have the language of yoga and the language of Pilates, I'm going to say a line that I used to say a lot, and tell me if you agree or disagree with this.
Okay.
All right. So when I used to train a lot of hockey players, I would say to them that the problem with hockey is that they went so fast into yoga, and what happens is that yoga was teaching people how to be bendy, whereas Pilates is giving them strength from their core and range of motion. So it was about mobility versus flexibility.
Yes, yeah,
Agree or
or
disagree?
strength. Yeah, I totally agree. And also like strength within that mobility or strength within the flexibility to the end range. Like for example, having them do any kind of side split work on the reformer with the hockey players and finding that balance of the flexibility, the range of motion, and the strength. Yeah, it's a very different world than just holding a stretch for sure.
Right. Okay. All right. Because you being a yoga person too, I want to make sure I wasn't doing disservice to the yoga community in saying that.
No, no, and I think that it's, that's part of the beauty of it is they are two separate standalone modalities. And when you like love and respect them both, they can come together and really complement each other.
Hmm.
When I do my teacher trainings, I'll often compare, like, Joseph Pilates took this from yoga. You can see where this was a yoga, like rollover slash plow, and
Mm.
talking about the differences, and one of my favorite sayings when I'm teaching the students is like, it's not wrong, it's just different. right? Like it's not wrong to be up on your neck in a shoulder stand in yoga. It serves a different purpose. It's more about throat chakra, energy pathways. You know, in
Yes.
Pilates, the positioning's a little different because we're moving our legs and it serves a different purpose. So
Yes.
it's not wrong, it's different.
Hmm. Yes. Well, yeah, and that's exactly it. And even as I was speaking, when I was teaching on the weekend, when you understand the principles and you understand the foundation of a thing, you can go anywhere with it. As long as you can,
Yes,
you know what I mean? As long as you can explain where you're going, what you did, why, like what the foundation is, and what, where we want to go with it. When you can explain those pieces, you can be cut loose and just teach how you want to teach, as long as you're communicating it correctly.
definitely. Like, what's your why? You know, like, why am I doing this exercise? What am I trying to stabilize? What am I trying to move? Like, what is the purpose of it?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with social media in the sense that it brings people together. We get to meet so many more people, but sometimes I just see things on social media and I'm just like, what's your why? Like, why are you doing that? You
Yes.
know, like, why are you in
Yes.
this dangerous position that looks really fancy, but like, who are you impressing? And
Hmm.
what client would you actually teach that to? You know?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Joel's comment here. Unless it's the Prasa yoga that the fighters used to do.
I'm sorry?
Can you read that comment there about the yoga? I don't understand the Parasa yoga.
Men need to have useful when they talk about friends.
Next two down. Unless it is like
Oh,
Parasa.
unless it's, if I'm understanding what he's saying correctly, is like part of the lineage of yoga was, you know, about strength and warriors and posing. And so I
Oh, I
think
see.
he's linking that back to the athlete
Okay.
piece
Yep.
about your comment about it maybe just being stretching. I think that's how I'm interpreting that.
Okay. Cool. Nice. So now so in Windsor you had a space, and then with COVID they shut down. You decide, okay, I'm gonna hang my shingle again, back to bricks and mortar.
I did. I really wanted to keep a studio space, the brick and mortar space, partially because I knew that my social media game and online presence wasn't there yet to like be making the money that I wanted to make, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, it's something that I really had to push myself to kind of embrace and like get into. And I feel like I still take like long pauses from social media. So hence taking the Pilates Masters program that I just finished and working towards developing more online content.
Cool.
So yeah, so I bit the bullet and signed another lease. I know it's kind of the opposite direction of what a lot of people are doing, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and still like building a team and looking at it as a business and, you know, hopefully having also more time freedom and things so I can focus on other projects is the
Yeah.
ultimate goal. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what's the course that you took?
The Pilates Masters program with
Hmm.
Anne Bishop and Chantil. They have a much broader, I would say, presence on Facebook.
Chantel
Um,
Lopez?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
Chantel
Yes.
Lopez.
Yep.
Yes, they both have very impressive backgrounds and they
Absolutely.
offer like a coaching program for Pilates instructors.
Cool.
Um, yeah, which I just found interesting because I've done coaching in the past. One in particular, but it wasn't, they didn't speak Pilates, you know, so I feel
Yeah.
like the fact that these ladies can speak Pilates and you know, they just bring so much content and information to it. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's interesting you say that they didn't speak Pilates, because there's times that I feel like I need to get out of Pilates world to understand it from someone who speaks purely business. But like you're saying, quite the opposite. Like we need someone who has that understanding of the Pilates business itself as well to help. Like it's just, is that more like the season that you're in that you needed that, or do you feel like that was more beneficial in general?
For me, I feel like it was way more beneficial.
Hmm.
The concept of putting together like a bigger, extensive online program was very similar as far as like find your niche client or your avatar, bring them from
Yes.
pain island to pleasure island, like all that business side was a similar template. But
Right.
what they brought to it as seasoned Pilates instructors, and the other content and information they gave us and really made us think about how we teach and
Yes.
what we're saying. And Chantel brings a lot of work on about the nervous system to the
Yeah.
table,
The
and
trauma informed and the parent. Yeah. Yes.
yeah, and brings a lot to the table around curriculum design and
Cool.
really designing a course that students will learn from as opposed to just pumping out workouts, I guess, is the biggest difference.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
So yeah.
Nice.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had Chantel on the show, and we dove deep on the parasympathetic nervous system and trauma informed and all those diving deep on
Yes.
that
Oh,
stuff.
excellent.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
excellent. And
I
I
missed
love,
that one. You have so many.
yeah, no, oh man, it's like you can spend days just going through so many there. But when she was talking, I thought it was interesting just celebrating her passion for that very specific niche, right?
Yeah.
Like in the same way that I love talking about Pilates for men and just making it more accessible to them and for athletes and stuff. That's her, I mean, she does a ton of stuff, but that's one of the things that she really specializes in.
Yeah, definitely. And it
Yeah.
was, I mean, as you know, you've spoken with her. It's fascinating, and then really analyzing like how I've been teaching for 20 years and how I've been cueing things, and
Mm,
both sides of it. Like on one side, I feel like I was doing things, around the nervous system. I just wasn't labeling that, and a lot of it
thank
was
you.
things from
Yes.
yoga.
Right.
It was
Okay.
things from the meditation piece of yoga and Reiki and cranial sacral, like things to reboot the computer, so to speak, which is really all nervous system work and stuff that I would have called the fluff that I would maybe do little crumbles of just because I
Yes.
wanted to incorporate it. And working with Chantel really brought to light like how important and huge that piece is, that it's not just
Yes.
off in the corner, but it should be the like
It's central.
center that it all revolves around.
Yes.
So that piece was really cool. And then also taking a step back and analyzing like how I'm not creating expert students in the sense
Mm,
that I don't know from my background, whether it's STAUD or just the time I came into or the fact that I taught dance, but like learning how to like shut my mouth a little bit more and let my clients think for themselves.
yes.
And that was a big challenge because like, I have entire workshops based on cueing and like the layers of cueing and cue, like to
Hmm.
the point that they're just like, they don't want to like lose their finger unless you've said, no, scratch your nose with your right finger, so
Right.
kind of analyzing that, which after over 20 years of teaching it's hard to take a step back, and say like, am I doing this wrong? Should I,
Yeah, totally.
say less, let them think a little bit more and yeah, I don't know what you
Mhm.
think about that and that whole area of
Well,
QA. And
well, I'm just laughing because like looking at Chantel's work before and after talking with her, there's things that I did even from my personal training days that she said is good to do and there's a label for it. It's intentional. And I'm like, yes, nailed it. I'm good. And then she'll say something else and I'm like, ooh, I do that all the time. I shouldn't have done that. Like,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
moments where you feel so good about yourself and there's moments where you just cringe at the thought of how many people you might have hurt by doing something, right? Like, and really people are gonna be fine, but it puts a layer of intentionality to your work and to the things you do and the things you don't do on purpose, right? Like, so the queuing thing is something that's key for me, and I love that. I
mhm,
love talking to those cues and the conversation I've had with people here and the ways that people cue and the little nuggets I've taken from different people has really, really helped the way that I teach. My clients have said that they can, by just talking to people, it's changed the way that I teach. Not even like going to a paid
yeah,
workshop and stuff, just having conversations with people that would just say different little strategies. I'll share one. I've said this a couple of times, but just for the
okay,
audience here today, one of the strategies that Lori Coleman Brown was on, and she would have two people in, like she's doing like a duet session, and she's taught these people many times, and she'll basically say to one person, okay, I want you to do with mat work, do as much as you can remember. I'm going to be over here. I'll be back in a few minutes, and just go, and just cut them loose. Like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
whereas we're like, okay, stand on your mat, have your hands like this, da, da, and like we are used to just talking through every minutia of the movement,
Everything.
shows us how
Yeah.
the moves to come back. But then the way she said it was like, move, 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 pounce. Move, 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 pounce. Like just let them go. Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Let me just adjust that. Okay, keep going. Or
Yes.
she'll open a class by saying, I'm gonna, you know, I want you to do these things. And if you don't hear me talking, you're doing it right. Just keep moving. I'll correct you if I need to say. So if I say something, then you know, whatever, I'll just keep moving. That sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So people are conditioned to like, I'm sure you've seen it too with your clients where they're moving, they're doing something while you're talking. The second you stop talking, they stop moving.
Definitely.
Right? You
No,
know,
and
and
that was the rut that I think like I put myself into
that's
was,
exactly
and
it.
then almost like, and I said to the ladies in the course, I said, trying to like say less, part of me almost feels guilty. Like I'm
Mm,
not working as hard or I'm not
yes, they're
giving them
not getting
what
their
they
money's worth.
paid for.
Yep.
You know, so if I'm not constantly like, beautiful, lift that kneecap and exit, you know, like if I'm not constantly giving them all the flowery stuff, it's like I went through this cycle of like, oh, I'm not working enough, you know?
Right.
And it gives
Yes.
them more empowerment because they feel like they can do more on their own. And that's going to
Yes.
carry again back when they go home
Hmm.
and they'll feel like they don't need us, you
Right.
know, to do
Yeah.
Pilates, really.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been a beauty of this quarantine that people have to take more ownership of their work. Um, but I listening to different people teach, that's how we find our voice, really, right? Like, I mean, so I've had militant teachers who sound like just drill sergeants. I've had people who say like 5 words: go, move, up, overhead.
Yes.
Like you mean like, and then there's
Yeah.
people who tell you everything. So I've seen just a spectrum of teachers, and I land at what works for me, right? And it's like, I think that
Mhm.
we should always be evolving and figuring out what our voice sounds like as we pull little pieces from different people. Um,
Yeah,
so
definitely. And also meeting our clients, you know, with what they need, you know, and finding that place where we're maybe going to challenge them and push them a little bit, but, you know, still giving them, you know, what they need. Because sometimes those anticipated cues, like that is where the magic happens sometimes as well, because the client
yes.
has that light bulb moment and,
Hmm.
you know, oh, I felt my big toe heavy and my inner thigh turned on. Like,
Right.
you know, those
Yes.
things
Yep.
that still, like those cues or those prompts, I think are still important, but
Yes.
also not wanting our clients to feel like they can't move their body unless we're in a room telling them what
Right.
to do.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
like the word prompts too. Like prompts is a good way of thinking about it because you just want the brain to just trigger what this is what should be happening in this movement pattern, right? So,
Yes. Or like reminders instead of corrections. You know,
yes.
so it's not this feeling of like, nope, that's wrong, but
Hmm.
you know, just that little reminder to soften or open the collarbones or, you know, whatever it might
Yes. Right.
be. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot in there, and that's it. I love continuing to learn and just refine our craft in that way.
Hmm.
Yeah, really good stuff. So at this point now, as you have your space, do you have a staff team in place at this time, or are you kind of waiting till we're open more to open our doors and get more people in?
Yeah, no, I've been building my team. We've been training underground throughout this lockdown, literally
Yeah.
'cause my studio's in the basement. But
Yeah. Oh,
so
like
no, I
literally
do.
underground.
I have a
Okay.
nice, so I have a nice little team built up. I'll
Mhm.
be shifting my own teaching time a bit come September. I'm just hoping for a big launch in September.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I do. I want to be able to service the community more. I was a one-woman show for a very long time, and so physically, it's only possible to see so many people in a week.
Right. Yes.
Um, so yes, I'm looking forward to having just more people in my space too, around the clock, like
For
playing a bit more of like,
sure.
you know, business hat on and like mentor hat for my team, and maybe seeing a little bit less clients myself. So
Right. For those of you who aren't in Ontario right now, as Renee and I talk, it's almost like prohibition times right now for us. Like
yeah,
you're trying to make things happen and just like lay low, find the proper legal loopholes to make things happen, or maybe not necessarily legal, but just less nonsensical rules to some of the things that are going on right now. But Yeah, it's an interesting time for us as we're trying to do things like
Yeah.
like my space behind me too, right? Like I opened this in July of last year, right? So I had my PT clients, but now actually physically having a space within High Octane, this training clinic, it's the same thing. Like
Right.
I actually haven't had a grand opening because we haven't really been open other than essential services
Same.
bringing people in, right? So
Yeah, like I couldn't really even do an open house because when I opened this space was September and all the numbers were still so limiting that I haven't really been able to, like you said, have a grand opening or, kind of launch things the way maybe I would have done,
right.
differently. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's funny you say prohibition because it's hard not to. I feel like the first lockdown was very like follow the rules, stay
Yes.
home. We get like 2 weeks worth of groceries.
Yes.
And third lockdown, I was like a bit of a rebel. I stayed open 2 days a week. I only did private
Yes.
training. Our gray area or loophole is if they have a doctor's note, then they can be here, right?
Right. Yes.
Um, but yeah, it's hard not to question like if we're both wearing masks and we're one on one and I'm sanitizing everything myself, like how is that more dangerous than going into like a Walmart?
Right.
So I kind of reach a point of, you know, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Time to open up.
Yes. Yes. No doubt. Are you still connected with Stott or Matthew in terms of your teaching training programs, or are you just doing your own branded work?
No, yeah, I just do my own, very small, mainly just looking to train people that want to work for me at this point. I'm not really,
Okay.
offering training to the masses. So I'm no longer working for them or affiliated with them. Still in touch with a lot of the lovely people there, but yeah, just my own business now, my own show for sure.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. So, who would
Yeah.
you say is your ideal client? This is my famous question, right? Like, I mean, your
Yes.
favorite person, I would train you for free the rest of my life in my studio because I love working with this type of person.
I love postnatal and
Mhm.
not that I love seeing a person injured, but I do love working with injuries. I feel like my ideal client is like a middle-aged, or older, even close to senior individual. Um, like I'll tell you a story of one client, for
Mhm.
example. Her daughter-in-law is actually in Toronto and said to her, like, you need to start doing Pilates. Like, you need to start doing something, move your body. And so
Yes.
when I got this lady on the phone finally, she's like, I'm 65, I'm overweight, I hate exercise, and I don't want to do this. Like that was her
Those are my,
that was
those
her
are my
entrance.
like, yeah, totally. Those are what I call my court ordered people. Like they're just here because
Yeah.
they have community service hours. They don't want to be here and they're here anyway, but proceed.
Yes, but what happened is, and this is where I think everyone's going to gravitate to that instructor they're meant to work with, in that sense that there's no competition because we're all going to end up where we're meant to be anyways.
Right, exactly.
But because she loved me and I got her to giggle and lighten up, like she ended up loving Pilates and became a client, for many years.
Yeah.
So I say with that kind of client or that like older individual that's just like, I don't want to do this. Like
Mhm.
that first time that I like see them smile and they like, they crack that shell and they kind of giggle and loosen up. It's just like,
Yeah.
there it is. Okay. Now I
Now
got
we
you. Yeah.
love that. Well, yeah, and that's sometimes that I from personal training days too. Like there was days like my mission was to simply make the person laugh today.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
Yes.
if we don't complete one full set of anything. If they laugh today, it's a win, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. And I do, like, I've loved all the clients I've worked with from sports specific to whatnot, but I really love, again, just like, like the older individual right now is, I think, who I really love, and just that, like, their goal is function. Their goal
yes,
is not necessarily like, I want a tight ass and a six pack or whatever, but
yeah,
their goal is like, I want to be able to get on and off the toilet and like pull my weeds in my garden
chase a
and
grandchild around.
yeah, pick up my grandkids, like, get on and off my boat this summer without, things like that and being pain
Mm,
free and just feeling good and confident in their body and their movements. Yeah.
yeah. Here in the city of Mississauga, one of the trends that they're looking at is aging active adults. And it's
Okay.
actually like the most neglected people group is that people who are in their 70s, 80s, even 90s who still want to play pickleball and badminton and go out and do
Yeah.
those things. But they're actually healthy and active, and there's nothing for them in the city. And so it's interesting
Mhm.
how like you're saying that you love that because like that's the one group that people are thinking, well, they're just gonna die, so let's worry about palliative care or
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like they're
Yeah.
not, no one's actually thinking about those people who are still active. And this is a really active city, much like your township too, right? So it's good that you're thinking about that.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Or even, around like, I'll just go to women's health for a moment, but I feel like there's a lot of focus on like prenatal, postnatal, like that younger group of women. And then it's like once you hit like 40 to 60, it's like no one cares. Like no one talks about like, well, what about like menopause in women and what that does to our bodies and how it affects our weight gain and our exercise and so yeah, I feel like the older populations in general all need a little bit more attention, and maybe just because I'm now in that bracket, so
Right.
I feel like
Yeah.
yeah,
It's true. I mean, like when we were going through this phase of having our kids and stuff, like I had a lot of prenatal women as my clients because like I was concerned about mom and also like thinking like that was just on my brain. So that and it just so happened that that was a lot of my clients during that time. I'd have like high level athletes who were not pregnant and like and that sort of thing. So we
yeah,
kind of go with our life stages, but to some degree you're kind of staying with that, right? Where we were talking about pre like pelvic health, aging
mhm.
adults, all those different things. Like those sound like those are still like areas that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like, women need to kind of take charge of their bodies a little bit more, whether it's prenatal, postnatal, or even just pelvic health later in life. It's an area where I think our health care falls short compared to other countries,
For sure.
and that a lot of women just they don't know enough, or they've just been told like, well, just shush, shush now, like this is life post baby, and
Yes, this is your
you
lot in
shouldn't
life.
enjoy things. Yeah, you're never gonna jump again. You're not gonna enjoy sex again. Like, just be quiet. Now you're a mom, and I feel
Right.
like that's one of my like statements that I want to get out there is I
Hmm.
always say like we're not our grandmother's vaginas. It's time to like move forward and take care of ourselves and like educate ourselves and like any trainer that says like, well, now you're going to pee your pants for the rest of your life, like that's ignorance, and there's a lot
Right.
of things you can do to
Right.
not live like that.
Yeah.
So
Do you have a
yeah,
t-shirt that says that? Like not my grandmother's vagina? Because
I
that
don't,
would
it's just been a hashtag, but I think I should get one made.
you should get one made. I think that might draw attention to what you do as your life's work. That might
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
Can you talk about your book?
Yeah, so my book was created for, like, I guess what we're saying really is for moms to kind of lighten the mood. It looks like a children's book. It's very colorful and it's a small, light read. And it kind of starts off like a spoof on green eggs and ham. It's very rhymey, like, I will not pee my pants, no ma'am. I will not pee my pants, smart mom I am. So just getting women to lighten up and talk about it, because a lot of
Yes.
women, like the fact that I even said the word vagina talking to you, I'm sure some women are just like, so I think part of it is being able to have the conversation and maybe giggle about it a little bit, and then, then take action to service yourself and understand what your body needs.
Right, right. It took 43 minutes for the word vagina to come out in our conversation, though, just for the record.
Yes. Oh, next time I'll say it sooner. So yeah, so the book is a light, easy read, and again, it's meant to bring a little humor to the table, and then I talk a bit about do's and don'ts post, which obviously the goal is to do everything, but understanding what your core is doing, what your pelvic floor and abdominal wall is doing, so that you know how to exercise and what you're ready to do when. So ideally, we all want to jump and plank and do everything, but understanding what's happening in your abdominal wall and pelvic floor,
Yeah,
and when you're ready to move forward in your programming.
for sure. So there's physical therapists and people who like dive deep and really, really specialize in this. For the average Pilates instructor, personal trainer, what words of advice would you give me in terms of cues and recognize when I need to refer out to someone and those sort of things? Like what's like for the person who's a general fitness person, what do we do with that information?
Yeah, well, I think, anyone that's having any kind of issues, even for men, there are a lot more pelvic floor physios out there now, and I also network with a massage therapist in the area that's taking, loads of specialty courses and specific pelvic work. So I think a big component is understanding also the letting go piece. I think as Pilates instructors, we've always traditionally taught about connecting the pelvic floor, but also the letting go and the lengthening, and the tightness being an issue, just as much as, what a lot of women think is, oh, now I'm weak and I need to tighten and strengthen. So coordinating breath with movement, I think as trainers, knowing to look at the abdominal wall, not body mass, and understanding how they're breathing, and what that looks like to then the pelvic floor. And that's again for men and women.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think understanding what you're looking for and how to see that on different bodies, regardless of their shape and size, is a game changer in how you're going to be training clients. Like one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing a postnatal picture for a Pilates class, and it has like a mom with her legs in an open kinetic chain and the baby loaded on her legs. Like for me, that would be a no-no. Like why are you an open chain already? And why are you loading a 20-pound baby on your legs, right? Like I know it might look like a nice moment for mom and baby, but is that really the best position for the mom to be in?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, say a little bit more about that. Well, just explain why that would not necessarily be dangerous, but probably be ill-advised early.
Yeah, and again, like I would like to say again that our
I know
goal
we're
is to
getting
do
really
everything.
technical with it, but I'm just for so people can hear that piece of it.
That piece, yeah. So, everyone post-baby wants to get back to doing everything. And obviously in Pilates, having both legs in the air is like a blueprint for a lot of our movements. But if your abdominal wall and pelvic floor, like, again, I don't need to get technical. Most people listening know their anatomy, what I'm talking about. But if you're not connecting properly and you're doing movements that are too aggressive for that stage in your rehab, you could actually be making it worse. So you can be creating more pressure through the pelvic floor, the abdominal wall, which could make your DR worse, or it could create one if it wasn't already there. Yes, yeah. So the breathing to me has always been huge, which is why I rebranded to Jellyfish, because I used the image of a jellyfish in the book, and it was just an image that I often use with clients, and it was kind of catchy and different. So the breathing to me is key. I know there's a lot of instructors that don't cue the breathing as much as I was kind of brought up to teach the breathing, but yeah, so again, I don't like to say that any movement's wrong. It's not that having your legs up is wrong. Eventually you're going to want to do that, but it's more so that message of like, this is a good exercise post-baby, and then maybe someone at home trying to throw themselves into that position with their abdominal wall doming out, creating pressure. If your belly is popping up and down, your pelvic floor is also bearing down, right? So we don't want to send our body that message of, I want incontinence and a stomach that's domed out, right? We actually want the opposite of that. But sometimes the movements that we choose or the way we do them is, could be doing more damage than benefit.
Yeah. That's a great analogy too. And I think of even like when you're walking, like you were talking about that relationship between the pelvic floor muscles being on and off, and there's a dynamic relationship to it. It's the same when we walk. Like we think about in a plank, we need to have our abs tight and our glutes on all the time. But when you walk, there's this dynamic relationship of the glute being on and off, of firing, engaging to lift off, whatever. I think it's the same with all these different muscles, that there's this interrelationship of being contracting and releasing for healthy function, as opposed to being contracted all the time or being released all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And finding your pattern. Like we all have holding patterns, right? For some people, it might be their upper traps. I think a lot of women hold their abdominal wall in, right? Like they want to and just like hold. You know, so it's finding out where you're holding, whether it's your pelvic floor. And also as a teacher, like I think the magic is like seeing that patterns. Like if your client in a plank is over clenching their glutes
Hmm.
and trying to hang on for dear life from one area, you know, like
Yes.
that's where the changes kind of start to take place, is maybe a little
Yes.
less effort in your common holding place and finding more length somewhere else. Or
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
definitely.
Nice.
Hmm.
So do you teach workshops on those sort of things? Because that's pretty high level. That's not like entry level, like teacher training stuff. Like,
Yeah, I have taught workshops. I've collaborated with some people locally. Just I've done specifically postnatal,
mhm.
and with my team, I want them to really understand that piece as well. So yeah, I'm looking at doing some more collaborations in the next year and a half or so. And the online program that I'm rolling out is more so just geared towards middle-aged women, like very beginner Pilates,
Okay.
and also incorporating the relaxation piece and some of that like nervous system work, but
Yes.
also wanting women to understand what we were just saying is, you know, it's not that the exercise choice is wrong or right, it's understanding if you're doing it correctly in your body
Right.
is kind of more important. Yeah.
Absolutely. That used to be my line, like back in the day, big box gyms, when I was talking about the difference between doing a fitness orientation where you're showing people the machines and designing a program. And I always say, like, there's one thing to know how to use the machines, and it's another thing to understand which machines work for you, right? So,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
like the reformer's not wrong, but for you, it might be better for us to start on a ladder barrel or whatever the case is, or just be like, we need to start with this
Yeah.
instead of this. And then understanding exactly how do we customize this experience for you based on where you are at, training the body that's in front of us, so to speak, as opposed to just saying there's a one size fits all approach to this for pre postnatal pelvic health, whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And again, and even for men, I worked with a professional um, ex-pro volleyball player before the last lockdown, and you know, a lot of these things we're talking about, it was similar with what was going on in his core, you know, different reasons, loads of jumping, plyometrics, a lot of pressure through the pelvic floor, and then that same
Yes.
patterning in the abdominal wall. So it's, you know, it's definitely men and women. I know I went on a tangent there about moms for a
No,
minute.
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, with men, it's true. I mean, I've had other people talking about this on the show too, but how, like, that's a tough conversation to have with men. Like, I know I can't sit down with my male clients and be like, okay, so we're gonna really focus on pelvic health for the next 6 weeks, and this is what we're gonna do, right? Like, you mean, how do we increase awareness, kind of sneak that into our programming, all those different things for men as well, because it is important and very, no, not very well, often spoken about, right?
It's important, and sometimes there's you know, like what I call like an unwinding piece, or
Okay.
like doing some release work first with, you know, little spiky balls, or you know, getting them to relax essentially.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's really not desirable, especially with a client, or you know, maybe a male client that wants, like, I want to work out, you know. So
Yes.
kind of finding that balance of educating them, getting them to
Hmm.
feel the difference. I also think that's
Yes.
a magical thing. The first time someone feels that difference in their core and how they've been
Yes.
bracing versus maybe lifting, lengthening, and connecting. So yeah, we wear a lot of hats as Pilates instructors, and the things
We
that we want
do.
our
Well,
clients to accomplish, I think.
yeah. Well, the longer we're in this game, the more tools we have in our toolbox, and we almost forget that we have some tools, and then we spend so much time on other tools. I love how Joel said here, like, I really like what you said about finding holding patterns. Knowing the
Mhm.
pattern is so important and has been for me. And that really, once again, that's my takeaway, Renee, where it's like, okay, so now what is, like, my next client, I'll be like, hey, what is their holding pattern? I wonder what their holding pattern is. Like, what's their holding pattern?
Uh,
Like, I could be like asking a question all day, right? Like, because
yeah.
that, it's true, it's there, like, within our own bodies. I guess I should start with myself and try and figure out what mine is, and
Yes, I was going to say that, and finding out where your holding pattern is as the teacher. Like I know for myself, because I get excited when I teach, and it's like I'm holding my own pelvic floor too much, or I'm holding myself too much because I'm doing it with them because I'm excited and I
yes,
want feel it. But then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, now I need to do my release work because I just
Yes.
like held myself so much. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. What other things do you incorporate, like from your training, Pilates? Do you dab into other modalities and kind of bring them
Ye-
to the table?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think well, I love TRX work. So I
Hmm.
mean that's completely apart from the Pilates world. And but that's, anything on the gym floor. Like I think that just using all these different tools in our toolbox is key. So yes, I'm big on Pilates, but I'll get people doing resistance training and working with their body weight and all these different things and tying all of it together all the time. And there may be times when it's just Pilates for months, and there'll be times where it's just all the weight stuff. And then I'll use
Right.
Pilates as almost like a dynamic warm up before we go out on the floor. Right.
Hmm.
So I'll tie it in that way. So I never really, as much as I say I'll get away from Pilates, I never get away from Pilates land, but
Right.
I'll add other stuff in, and whether it's a dynamic warm up or the cool down or a movement pattern, or I'll see something while we're on the weight floor and be like, we're gonna finish off with 20 minutes in the studio. Let's go back here and we can, you know, do some tower work to open up your shoulders and your chest a little bit more, or to get that glute activation that we couldn't find in your squat, or whatever the case is. So I like to
Yeah.
tie it together that way.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how you feel, but I think in this last year acknowledge that, we are human and there's days where I'm super creative and I'm, bringing out all the toys from the tool bag. And there's other days where, maybe we're not as creative and you are going to do like a very similar routine that you've seen before and then focus on those details, like it
Absolutely.
can't always be reinventing the wheel. Like there's something to be said about the ritual and like
Yes. The
the
routine.
repetitiveness, the routine of kind of getting it
Absolutely.
into your bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the classical repertoire too, right? That is the beauty of
Mhm.
it, is that you can go into this what's the word I'm looking for, but like there's this liturgy of going through the exercises where people know what's coming next, and then they can measure based on the last time they did it, how they felt, how much range they had, or how strong they felt, how connected they
Yes.
felt. So there's a beauty to that too, where now I can flow through that, and they're learning it, I'm learning it, they're learning more about their body. They're able to get those checkpoints through their body as they do familiar movements at the same point, to be able to measure how they were against themselves last time too. So yeah, there is a beauty in that,
Yeah,
that releases me from thinking like I have to be on YouTube trying to find some fancy new exercise for this week, sort of thing,
definitely.
right?
Yeah. And even the former, I feel like I kind of have a set former routine that I can very easily do, like with every client to a certain extent with their own tweaks and modifications and maybe cueing things
Sure.
differently. Yeah, and that's something that I like to say to my teachers is even though like you might be bored and you think that you need to bring something else to the table, like your client might still need that routine and that ritual and they're
Yes.
still figuring out how to breathe or where their pelvis is in space. They don't necessarily need something
Right.
fancier.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's key. And even, back in the day teaching a Tabata class or something, I would give people the same exercise week over week just so they can measure their progress. I mean, there's something to be said
Yeah.
for, if you change it so much, then they don't even know if they're getting better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If it's too fancy and constantly different every single week, it's hard for them to, integrate it into their body and like understand the basics. Like there has to be
Right.
some kind of foundation that you can
Hmm.
revisit. And like you're saying, like I love that they can mark their own progress, and then kind of drip in and layer it with the fancier choreography and,
Yes.
different movements.
Yeah, absolutely. Your book, can you put it in the chat section so people like know what it is and where they can
Yeah.
find it? Are you still like,
Yeah.
is it
Actually, I
like,
can.
yeah, just put it.
Well, I sell it on my website.
Okay,
I have to
perfect.
say it came out during the first lockdown, so it's never made its way into chapters or anything, so then everything just keeps getting closed. But this is what it looks like.
Okay, nice.
So I sell it on my website. I ship it out myself. It's selling in some local businesses here in Windsor as well. So yeah, if anyone's interested, please DM me, reach out. My website is Jellyfish Pilates, so you can buy it there too.
Amazing.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I'm looking forward to like seeing you in real life and hang out and throwing down a workout at some point since we're like
I would love to.
probably what,
Yeah.
2 hours away from each other?
It depends on how fast you drive, maybe 3.
Yeah, I drive pretty
Yeah.
quick.
2.5 to Mississauga, maybe.
Yeah. Too funny.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to hear what you're doing. I'm so excited to see how your business blows up as we start to open up this province a bit more.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, and I would love to take a road trip and play together sometime. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. We'll make that happen. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Joel, thanks for your comments. And I see Kai, a couple, it's so funny. I have quite a few guys in our chat today. And usually it's like, I see Darren's there, Misty Lynn Cawthon was popped in for a bit. I see Sonia, Philip Griffin. So this, yeah, follow these people. We got some really special Pilates people in this space that are always cheering us on. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Take
My
care.
pleasure. Take care. See ya.
Bye.